All right, thank you so much for that. All right, are we ready?
Woo!
So, so let's see what does that look like. And this is a very big topic. We have, like we said, we're running a super tight ship tonight. So it's gonna be the tip of the iceberg. We're just gonna cover high level stuff. So back in the 6th century BC, it was a Greek philosopher Heraclitus who talked about the law of change, and that still applies to the tech industry today. So companies who don't iterate fast enough, who don't stay ahead of the curve, who don't constantly, check the signals of their end users in country, right? Whether through product data collection, through user research, qualitative, quantitative, through A/B testing in international markets. As you know, most companies do English, US, international testing only, and then apply learnings to global, localize the UI. But really, you want to get the signals from the end users in country that are not one size fits all. And so companies who fail to do that, fail to respond to those local signals, lose it to local competitors who do. So, we see it all the time, right? I just want to give an example from 2004, classic example. So when eBay entered China in 2004, it was a big name, and it had planned to dominate the market. At the time, Taobao, which, does everyone know what Taobao means, literally?
Yeah.
What?
Find treasure.
Yeah, digging for treasure. Part of the Alibaba group, of course, was a local competitor helping small to medium-sized merchants buy and sell online. Very few people outside of China had heard about them. Everybody heard about eBay, right? So as you can see, eBay did pretty much all the right things. I mean, they came in, they had already the global brand trust established. They beyond localized the UI or translated the UI, they actually localized the creative as well. It was pretty much a native look and feel. They came in with a lot of budget. They invested $100 million in local operations. They invested in very aggressive ad campaigns in the country. They partnered with the right entry point, local partners like local portals like Sina. They thought they, really did above and beyond everything that needs to be done. So what happened? Why did they lose the market to Taobao? Right. So the answer is really embedded in a single component, not a single component, but in one key area that many companies fail to understand today. So it's not just about your international user understanding your product, right? For that, you translate, you localize, they get it, they understand your value prop. This is one part of it. That's what a lot of companies invest in. But the second part of it, which very few companies actually do, is that it's about you understanding your international user, right? So Taobao won China market because they understood Chinese customers. What did Taobao do that eBay didn't do? Just a couple of examples. So first of all, they understood that Chinese consumers in China, they are more cost sensitive. So they simply provided better terms. They provided longer listings, 14-day listings, with a free automated option to renew for another period. They understood that auction, for example, which accounted for about 40% of eBay's listings, was not as common as habituated custom in China. So they only allowed for 10% of their listings to be auctioned. The rest of it was straightforward buy and sell. They understood that China is mobile first, and so they enabled. Actually, just an interesting note at the time. There were about 300 million smartphone users in China, but only 90 million internet users in China, right? Just to give you a perspective. So they got that, and so they enabled for instant messaging on mobile, voice message on mobile between buyers and sellers. eBay did not have that kind of flexibility, primarily because they switched to their global standard, right, in their backend platform infrastructure, which did not allow them to iterate by geo, iterate by different markets, right, or adapt very, very fast enough and effectively, right? So there are many other things. I mean, of course, payment methods. They, offered cash on delivery, which eBay was not able to deliver. And even on the site optimization side, you can see some, Taobao did constant iteration, constant A/B testing. Of course, they focused on China market, right? So what you see at the top there, quick links under the search bar. eBay just was not fast enough to iterate on that. That was a big win for their usability. They also, in terms of user use type, they categorized. They had a more filtered, more fine-tuned categorization of user types. For eBay, it was just buyers or sellers. For Taobao, it was split into cohorts of age and other cohorts. And so many different things. But you get that idea. So really, with product strategy, what I always say is global product strategy that every company targets for their core objectives. It's really about local product strategy. And that is on all levels, from platform infrastructure, from the way you conduct your business, from strategic partnerships in country, discoverability, entry point in country, and of course the product experience. Because we talk about product behaviors and what triggers a user to take the action designed for the page. That is different. That is just different. The ecosystem is different, but the users are different. They expect different things and different sensitivities in Germany, in Japan, in China, in different countries. So when Taobao, within 2 years, so from 2004, by 2006, Taobao was already winning the market. They had 67% market share, whereas eBay in 29%. And Jack Ma stated, of course, the CEO of Talia Baruch stated that eBay is the shark of the ocean, okay, global, will be the crocodile in the Yewser River. So it's up to you to decide whether you want to be the shark or the crocodile, but understand that in order to win the ocean, in order to win the global, you need to win river by river in your local markets, and you can only do that by understanding your local user, your local market, your local ecosystem to allow that growth. So I want to give an example from my time at LinkedIn. So this is back in 2015, actually, is when we had a soft launch at the end of 2014 in China, but this app came out in July 2015. And at the time, we had, LinkedIn had market maturity, certainly in the English core markets. We had really nice growth and penetration in many other international markets. So China was the big rock, was the big target for that year. And we did what every company does. We localized, we translated into simplified and traditional Chinese. As expected, that did not, that brought some not significant growth. Okay, so we had to come up with a different strategy. And what we did is quite drastic, but we kind of went all in. So we decided, okay, first of all, we applied basically a cannibalism approach. Okay, so we said if anyone's going to compete locally with LinkedIn, it was going to be LinkedIn. So we looked at different factors. First of all, the value proposition. We have on LinkedIn multiple value propositions for networker, for talent seeker, for job seeker, and so on. For content consumer, we said, well, what is that single value prop for China? And because the age cohort in China is much younger, so the addressable segment is students and professionals for LinkedIn. What does that look like in China? The vast majority, the prominent age cohort is the 17 to 24. So single value prop would be entry level or internship, first job, right? So we built because it's a mobile first region, we built a standalone off-stack, lightweight mobile app intended for the young professionals for the single value purpose of finding your first entry-level job. And of course, it had all the right entry points. So WeChat integration was the big lever for growth, really. But not just growth, but quality growth. So quality new signups that show up, engage new signups. So that was WeChat integrations, Weibo and some people and so on. It was, produced 100% made in China, native look and feel. The whole UI UX was very native. And to top it all up, we didn't really call it LinkedIn. It does, of course, it's powered by the LinkedIn data, and of course, it does have say LinkedIn at the bottom in small font, but we called it Chilu. So that's what a lot of companies, that's maybe that extra step that not every company would be willing to do. But we understood that, China actually, both government and consumers prioritize local brands. And so we came out as a local brand. And until today, this is really the only social media, or US at least, multinational social media that operates and does very well. So what are some, so I'm going to talk very fast because we have very little time. I wanted to kind of just spit out some 3 major misconceptions in international product management. So the first is, the assumption that one size fits all, right? So typically you see products in the early phase of, dev, even in the prototype phase of dev design, they're really built for US fit. And then, typically they're also A/B tested for your English US, and then learnings are applied to global later on. Usually the release is English first, and later releases will be international. And the last one is, the last misconception in that strategy is that that's where the money comes from, right? So let's nail it first for our English, for our US customers, make sure the value prop works and so on. Then replicate that for global. And it is true that typically, most companies have a 60-40 monetization split, 60% coming from the US domestic and 40% from international. But of course, that's because in many cases, they are not really maximizing the potential, both the growth and the monetization potential from the international markets, because they're not doing those extra things in their product experience and in their partnerships experience. So, just to give you an example, in terms of monetization, for example, there are many other markets, there are some companies, very, very few companies have a 60-40 reverse pyramid, right? This is, of course, a signal that it's a healthy global product strategy. Procter & Gamble gets that. They get 60% of their revenue generation from outside of the US, but they do those extra steps. They do the product geo-fit. So, as an example, Japan, for example, there's very high expenditure in Japan, and in just to kind of illustrate that. So in 2014, so Japan is a very local, it's a very local, homogeneous society, and a lot of, there's online shopping is very, of course, prevalent, but only about 32% of Japanese online shoppers actually buy from websites outside of Japan. So in 2014, the value of Japanese shoppers purchased a value of $1.7 billion from US websites, and a little bit over $250 million value dollars from Chinese websites. And those combined numbers, so a little bit over $2 billion, represented only 3% of their annual expenditure online that year. That was 100% year-over-year growth from the previous year, right? So you can see the monetization potential, and this is just one market. So companies who don't, who dismiss Japan from their global strategy rollout are simply leaving a lot of money on the table. So the concept of, the premise of make it, products need to be US fit first in the years to come is no longer the reasonable strategy for scaling global growth. We see winds of change. We see different things, or different movements in terms of economics are shifting around the globe. So by 2020, there'll be billion middle class consumers in emerging markets with a $10 to $100 per day per head expenditure, right? We know that in Asian markets, the growth has doubled in the last decade. And of course, in the mobile space, US is actually lagging behind, right? It's a double growth in mobile in international versus in the US. So here's a little trivia question. Who can guess what is the number one country in the world today with the highest mobile data usage?
Korea.
What? Korea?
Korea.
Okay, what else? China, Korea. What else? This is mobile data usage. Russia. So we have Korea, China, Russia. Yes? What? Bangladesh. Any other thoughts?
Indonesia.
Close?
Thailand.
Not Thailand? So,
Malaysia.
somebody said India? Yeah. So India, it's amazing because just last year, in 2016, it ranked in the 150th place in the world. And this year, within a year, it leaped to the first place in mobile data use, in mobile broadband, right? So again, US is like way down. So it's not always, we always assume that it's US first for product field prioritization and increase. Okay, so when we
Oh, is that back?
We're good. That's fine.
Oh, is that okay, perfect. Be local to win global, right? If there's one thing you can remember, if you take away from this, I would love you to take away that. So the five principles. I'm not going to go deeply into this, but of course, when you define, the first step is to define who are going to be your priority markets, right? You cannot, optimize for all the markets at once. And of course, that could be depending on your product, but internet penetration in country, GDP for monetization opportunity, remainder headroom growth for growth opportunity, and so on would be the criteria. Value prop, addressable segment, right? All those things need to be re-questioned for your priority markets. What does that look like? And then implement the product geo-fit. Again, I'm talking about all those things are beyond language support, right? Language support is baseline. And then some things you can build once and apply to all. Some things like, establishing, domain treatments with the CCTLDs, establishing dynamic sitemaps with RefLang. Those things can happen for multilingual, multi-geo at once. And or platform infrastructure, building a very modular platform infrastructure that allows you to generate dynamically. For example, when I worked at SurveyMonkey, we actually halted the code. We did code freeze, and we went back and refactored the code for pricing and payment platforms, so that we can dynamically generate by geo, so by user ID, IP address, the right payment, the right checkout experience, the right pricing page experience. So those are things that you apply for global, right? So at SurveyMonkey, I prioritized for 2016 UK and Germany. UK, very different markets, very different effort needs. So UK, basically all English markets received basically the US product experience, right? It's the English experience, nothing changed. So, but of course it's a very different market. Yes, they speak English, but the sectors are different, right? We have, at several markets we have different templates for healthcare, for education, and so on. In the UK, it's much higher focus on public sector. So it's the NHS for healthcare. It's public higher education that looks completely different. So we had to create local content. We had to do a lot of, local bank questions and so on. But because it was already a mature market, the success metrics were not growth or brand perception, because we already had all of that. It was more around brand loyalty because of our local competitors. So what do we need to do to boost that? For retention, of course, and the monetization opportunities. So to increase conversion to paid, and for server market conversion to paid, the highest trigger is the deploy of the second survey. So all the optimizations I've done on the product side were toward those optimizations. Germany, on the other hand, was a new market entry because we had actually very low brand presence, perception, awareness. So just to be discovered, right? Discoverability was a big effort. So entry point from local platforms like Zing and others, a lot of SEO effort, a lot of sort of top of funnel, building new onboarding, welcome flow that is geo-specific, not just language specific, but very much local, tied to local current events in Germany and so on. So if we kind of dive into just one market, just to kind of as an example, as a thought process. So what does value prop look like? Let's say you're picking Japan. So Japan is a society where the harmony of the group is held higher than the expression of the individual. Right? So for us at LinkedIn, the whole premise of the LinkedIn profile is centered around your individual professional identity. And users, it's no-brainer for them you boost your profile, you add your skills, you get endorsed, you put all your achievements there, you invite your manager to connect with you and other people. What does that look like in Japan? So we have to really think about, what is the expected behavior of Japanese users in this scenario? When I asked Japanese consumers about how they define success, it was not so much in terms of their individual professional success, but in terms of their individual professional success was actually reflected in their contribution to the success of their company. Right? So a much more top-down versus bottom-up approach was more of a direction. In terms, again, this is just gathering the information so that we, for Japan at the time, so that we could prepare for this market entry. Who are you prioritizing, optimizing for, right? So addressable segment is different in different markets. Japan is the country today with the oldest age cohort, right? Or oldest demographic group. So actually by 2050, 40% of the population is going to be over age 65. Right? It's crazy. Today it's 27%. Who is the youngest nation in the world, today? India, yeah. Right. And of course, Southeast Asia. And so, for today, for example, online shopping, in terms of volumes in Japan, the highest volumes of digital shoppers in Japan today is women at the age of 40 to 49. And the highest value in terms of expenditure is people of the age 50 to 69. Right? This is a factor. This is a different, a certain use case that you need to think about when you build your product. Of course, mobile first. So you can expect that in Japan, over 60% of people in Japan would actually use your mobile web. Of course, a higher percentage would use your native app. Japan is considered today the country with the highest number of app downloads. Can you guess how many, on average, roughly Japanese user, how many apps they have on their app, on their phone, mobile phone? So it's around 100, right? So it's a lot. So mobile site versus optimized or responsive mobile web, actually building a lighter weight, more condensed and more focused mobile site is a value. Of course, any company a lot of companies don't do anything special for Japan, so in their onboarding flow, they don't necessarily, they don't have, let's say, download, like sign up with download your app / promos in their onboarding. If they don't have it for the English global, they're not going to have it in the Japanese. So of course this is critical because you're losing top of funnel. You're already losing a lot of quality signups that could be potential. Okay, I'm getting the signal. So wow, I have so much more to share. So okay, I'm gonna skip, I guess. I'm going to do a couple of skips. All right, you get it? Okay, here I just really wanted to share with you some, I've done a lot of A/B testing at SurveyMonkey, and we've had some fantastic learnings and insights from really, really high enablement. So top of funnel stuff in terms of discoverability, both for brand and non-brand searches. The combination of ccTLD treatment, so the .de, for example, and the combination of dynamic sitemap with RefLang brought us this phenomenal lift in the country. Things that I just have to. I'm gonna. I guess I have to tell you about this. So here on the left, on the right, is just the global sign up page that we had, which was then translated into a bunch of languages. And so when I came in, I've optimized it by geo, the sign-up page. And so you can see here a lot of different things. So first, removing friction from 4 fields to only 2. Of course, in Japan, you want to a lot of, mobile-first region, not just Japan, you want to have mobile enablement, so autofill for fields, for building fields, and retaining sign-up information in the downstream funnels later on. So reducing to 4 fields, and this is something that's really interesting. So Germany is a country where users are extremely, this is again how German users are different from US users, extremely sensitive to data privacy. And so this is something that if I enable this, explicit check boxes for terms and conditions and so on before sign up button CTA, it's suicidal in the US. Of course, it's going to introduce friction in new signups. There's no question about it. But in Germany, we not only it not only hurt the signups, but we actually had an 8% lift in overall just with this enablement for engaged new signups. And for us, it's signups that new users that actually deployed their first survey, which is huge. Trusted shops is a trust seal that you want to show in your checkout experience for DACH countries, which was really fun. Okay, I'm way behind. So I'm happy. I'm just going to skip over to the last one. There's a lot of other testing that we've done, very interesting. And the last slide. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn is the best way, or email me afterward, or find me later for, happy to answer any questions. But I didn't want to leave you with those final thoughts. I'm not going to read it, you just read it. All right, thank you. Thank you, Talia. Give it up for her one more time.